I've put hundreds of hours into meditation and studying Stoicism, and I realized I did it wrong. There's a subtle but important difference between two types of non-attachment. If you meditate or study Stoicism, you might get the feeling that you care less and less about the world. That's the wrong type of non-attachment. I've noticed this many times in my own experience. I hear people talk about feeling connected and blissful, but all I felt was, as Pink Floyd would say, comfortably numb. I could even feel proud of how equanimous I could look at the world, but in reality nothing would hit me. This is the disconnected type of non-attachment. If you do any spiritual practice, it's really important to be aware of this. Don't let it trick you into thinking that you're on the right path. If you ask your mom or your neighbor what Stoicism means, they probably tell you something like a person who is emotionless, like nothing can hit them. You feel like an unfeeling observer. This is only the case if you fall into the pitfall of disconnected non-attachment. There is a type of non-attachment that wants to make you improve the world instead of care less about it. It's a type of non-attachment that's more equanimous and non-reactive, while still allowing the sensations. This type of connected non-attachment gets you closer to yourself instead of further away from it. You're concerned less about what others think, and paradoxically, you connect better with them. You allow yourself to process and feel sensations without feeling overwhelmed by them. It's a journey, not of becoming numb, but of living life with a steady, unshakable presence. What are examples of connected non-attachment? I haven't mastered this fully and it will be a lifelong practice, but you are deeply listening to people, and instead of trying to prove that you're right, you are just listening to them. You are stung by a bee and you allow the sensation, you don't try to run away from it, you are just being with it, no pun intended. You stubbed your toe and a friend is telling you a story about his breakup and you're actually able to listen. You choose to live sustainable and eat sustainable foods without being overwhelmed by the state of the environment. Mindful consumption. You enjoy the pleasures of life without being a slave to it, or doing a great job at work without connecting your self-esteem to it. In my free meditation course, I discuss the R.A.I.N method, which stands for Recognize, Accept, Identify and Non-Identification, and it can be very powerful if done right. I've always felt a little bit of resistance towards the non-identification part. I felt like I had to reject a certain part of my experience, but this leads to the disconnected type of non-attachment. The goal isn't to become emotionless or indifferent. Connected non-attachment empowers you to stay calm in the midst of the storm of life. You still feel deeply and act compassionately. You sit down and meditate and you recognize a feeling that you are having in your body. Next, you accept it, you welcome it, you say it's okay, it can be there, it can go whenever it wants. Third, you start to investigate the sensation. You become curious, you want to know what shape it has. Is it heavy or light, fuzzy, smooth? Is it moving? Does it have a center? And the last step is non-identification. You understand that the sensation isn't you and that yourself or your essence can look at it with compassion. Being non-attached can be a part of your personality. Up until I was 11 years old, my report card said the same thing every year. Try to pay attention, don't look out of the window. And I didn't do it on purpose. It was annoying because I never heard what the teachers were explaining, so I got really good at imitating others. I believe that by staring out of the window I trained myself to become more introspective, and I started to question everything. How do I know for sure that other people see the same colors as I do? If the soles of shoes slowly wear and tear, does that mean that the whole schoolyard is full of tiny pieces of shoe? I wonder if the walls are actually a little bit skewed, or is it just my eyes fucking with me? I wonder how far I can shoot if I make a catapult out of this pen spring. Or I was just staring into space, zoning out of all the impulses that came to me. Only last year I learned about the origin of this absent-mindedness and about the two different types of turning inward. There's a system 1 and a system 2 turning inward. The system 1 is automatic and it's a protective mechanism. System 2 takes effort and it can help you reflect on yourself. And these two will often alternate between each other. So effortless turning inward is an automatic response and it's also known as dissociation. This is a mental anesthetic. If a cat catches a mouse, the mouse suffers from so much pain, but it cannot escape, so it escapes mentally and it dissociates from the pain to protect itself. Some kids are born more sensitive than others, and what's fun to one kid can be very impactful and intense to another child. When you experience these intense sensations, you feel threatened. If there's no way to escape physically, you will do so mentally. And this becomes an unconscious psychological mechanism which you cannot change at will. It's part of your system 1 automatic thinking. So in a nutshell, you dissociate because you feel emotional pain, and even a very small amount of emotional pain can already trigger dissociation. You feel emotional pain because your brain is over-aroused and you might have your doors of perception standing open just a bit more than the average person. And this makes you easily overstimulated but also highly creative. Your level of arousal is connected to your ability to focus. When you're over-aroused, you can't start focusing, and when you're under-aroused, you can't start working. In both cases, I was staring out of the window, either to disassociate from the energy in the classroom or to just entertain my own mind by asking questions. I believe that this unconscious response of tuning out can also teach your mind to reflect on itself and to turn inward in a good way. And this can help you in the following ways. For example, doing Vipassana and noticing the sensations in your body, although you could argue that that is not really turning inward because your body is still outside of your mind. Or you could undergo internal family systems practice and get a clear view of your inner parts. Or a simple meditation where you just watch your thoughts. And self-reflection, because apparently not everyone can do this. It's a skill that you can learn. And last but not least, being very imaginative, becoming creative, because staring out of the window is the main ingredient for creativity. And there's something that you need to learn if you think it's all about controlling stimulation. All day we are hooked up to a stimulation drip. And as the minimalist that I am, I love to have just one screen, one pen, one notebook. But for years I've been walking around with the wrong belief. Less is more. And although this is often true for design, it's not always the case for productivity. Key here is to realize that stimulation is not your main concern when you try to focus. Your main concern is your adrenaline score. Stimulation and adrenaline are related. When you doom scroll YouTube shorts all day, your adrenaline score is really high and you're unable to focus. The problem is that it leaves you powerless if you believe that there's no way back at that moment because you've already stimulated yourself that much. But this isn't true. After zoning out on YouTube or X, you can always check in with your adrenaline score and get it to the right level. If you're curious about how to do that, check out the last video in the corner over here. Thank you for watching this video. If you think it was useful, subscribe, because most people that watch these videos are actually not subscribed. And don't forget to eat your broccoli.